So just trust me on this one. You're not ready. Um,
And trust me when I say if Charles says you're not ready, then it's really not okay at my
yeah,
house.
yeah, yeah. He's not wrong. Um,
Daddy, tell me a story.
And
let's,
the story that you have put on here is what
ah,
guidelines slash discipline did you do for your firstborn that you changed for your other kids?
yeah. This kind of popped up naturally a few weeks ago for us. I don't remember what the story was, but you know, if you're being, in my opinion, if you're being honest with yourself, every parent parents differently for each kid, and it becomes really bad when you don't admit that. Because in
Yeah.
my opinion, you should parent differently, but there's also consistency. That's the crux of it all. So, what is something that maybe you were strict on Malachi about when he was 2, 3, 4, 5, but now that Jebediah's coming along, you're either like, whatever, it's not going to kill you, or you learn something.
Yeah. It's definitely got to be what they watch, to be completely honest. Mostly because if the older two are watching something, Jebediah he's gonna see it. And so we let Jebediah watch things way earlier than we would have with the older two. There's a lot of movies and shows and stuff that he has been exposed to a lot earlier than his older brothers. Because so for those that are unaware, so I've got a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and then a 6-year-old. So there's a 2-year gap between the oldest two, and then there's a 5-year gap down to Jebediah. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing is just the content that he is allowed to consume. And I saw that in my own family growing up as well, where what I was allowed to watch, I guarantee my older brother when he was my age wasn't. But there's an 11-year gap between me and my older brother. So when it's family movie night, you're not going to the lowest common denominator most of the time. And so yeah, I watched all kinds of stuff when I was young that was definitely not age appropriate. But
Well,
yeah.
and it becomes harder as you progress. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Um, okay, so you got it. That's not the one I want. We're in this right now. But that's you get a kid that's 12 and you have a kid that's 6. So you either have to work around times, like maybe your 6-year-old goes to bed and then you can watch something in a limited amount of time with your 12-year-old. We found the same thing, right? It's the set one. By the time Zoe was born, let's see, Oakland's about to turn 21. She just turned 12. So 9 years, almost 10 years difference, right? Now, there are different times when I'll say, "Hey, I'm gonna take them to see this. You guys aren't ready," type of deal. But there's a lot of gray area that when my kids were 6 and 7, like, "Yeah, I don't want you watching that." And then when set 2 became 6 and 7, I was like, "Just go get away from me. Just go get on your tablet or something." I don't know. And it becomes a weird thing. I actually had to sit down with my son at some point because, like you said, you saw it in your family. I saw it in my family as well. Of, I mean, my sister's only 3 years younger than me, but they were drastically. I mean, they did the different parenting in the bad way, in my opinion. Um, because there was zero consistency. So I want to get back to, even though you've made changes, what is something you're keeping consistent, even though it might look different with each kid, it's still consistency. So think about that. But I actually sat down with my son and was like, "Hey, you're going to see me, get mad at you and get you. You might get in a lot of trouble for one thing, and then possibly it could be weeks later, it could be months later, it could be years later. one of your siblings does the same thing and you remember it because it kind of scarred you how much trouble you got into, and you're going to see me do it differently with them. First off, I want to apologize ahead of time because it's not fair, but life isn't fair. The reality is, you as the firstborn will get to do a whole lot of things first. First job, first car, first girlfriend, first what, all these things that they're going to look up to you for and want to do because you do it. But that also means you get the first mistakes. And as much I will try to keep you out of it, the honest reality is there's going to be times when I'm refining my parenting on you and your sister. And then when your set two gets old enough to do the things that y'all were doing at that age, you will see me parent differently. But it also goes in both directions. Sometimes I learned something on set two that becomes a new open standard for everybody. Get a little more relaxed, a little more
Yep.
helpful, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
what has stayed consistent for you, Joe, even in making changes?
Probably our emphasis on reading. Now, our strategy on how to try to get our boys to read more has changed and modified over the years, but our emphasis on reading, because we view that as something um, very critical to their development, and uh, so many studies show that kids that are either read to or that you can instill that love of reading, they just do so much better at life in general. And so that has been one of the big things that we have consistently done with all of our boys, is had an emphasis on reading. And so, like, for instance, we don't give um an allowance per se, but we do offer them an amount. We pay them for reading. So depending on how much they read, they will get paid, and it depends on the reading level as well. So if they're reading something with that's way below their reading level, they're going to get paid less than if they read something at their reading level or above their reading level. And so that monetary incentive has helped a bunch. So like Bob, he read the entire Percy Jackson. Well, he read the first series, so the first 5 books. He hasn't read the follow up series yet. He's working on it. Um, but yeah, so he's been reading a bunch of the Percy Jackson books. Um, Malachi, he's been reading these books from the library about some cat warriors that he's apparently liking quite a bit. Um, I've read the Harry Potter books with the oldest two, as well as a few others. We're working on the Aragon books now. With uh, Jebediah, we've read through the Bad Guys books and a few others, and on his own, he's been reading um, books about some of the Marvel superheroes. And so yeah, so just instilling that love of reading will help them just so much with life in general. And so yeah, that's one thing that we've been very consistent on.
Good. Ours has been attitude, consistently. And lectures. All four of my kids heard a lot of the same stories and a lot of, and every time I approach it, maybe a little bit different for the kid, but the consistency is, I'm going to sit here and talk to you. You might rather I be old school Christian and take a belt to you or something, but I'm gonna sit and take things away. And ultimately the consistency has I had to be a brick wall at certain times. Like, you when it comes down to you having to learn to let go of your what you want to then get what you want, I will do that. And family adventures. We have consistently offer to at a certain age, people have to go. Like, look, I know you might rather want to sit at home in your little kid cave and watch your YouTube or whatever, but you're coming out and you're doing these festivals with us. And they had to go. They didn't have to necessarily participate, but they were never allowed to pout or have a bad attitude about it. And so that's been the thing that they've all seen is like, no matter what, they're gonna get choice, they're gonna get agency in a lot of situations. And but when we say this is it, that's done, it's done. And that it's rare. It happens so rare nowadays, fortunately, that I have to draw a line in the sand and say this is it. That I think one of the last times was some movie that I think Zoe wanted to watch, and I was like, "Yeah, no." And she's like, "But why?" And I went, "Be honest. When was the last time I told you a hard no on something and didn't just discuss something with you?" And she said, "I don't think you've ever done this." Exactly. I reserve it. So just you're gonna have to trust me on this one. You're not ready. If you try to watch it against my wishes, what's going to do is it's going to hurt your brain and hurt your soul, and I won't have to do anything to punish you. So just trust me on this one. You're not ready.
And trust me when I say if Charles says you're not ready, then it's really not okay at my
Yeah,
house.
yeah, he's not wrong. And I've even balanced what I don't like. Like I don't like horror, so I don't know that anybody should watch it. But basically, you always kind of had in my head that my kids would have to be at least out of the house as far as like working, 16, 17. And the older ones talked me into some stuff at some point, and I said, all right, here's the deal. You wake up screaming in the night. You get scared about something. If I see a change in you for any reason, it's done. And the older kids did it well enough that they actually guided the younger ones. Like when Ryland really wanted to get into horror films and watching that. I mean, I don't watch them, so I don't know how to judge it other than hard no. And his older siblings took him under his wing and did what we modeled. They talked to him. They told him the guidelines, kind of told him what to watch for, and then they watched it with him to make sure he was all right, and nothing went bad for him.
Well, I don't know if you saw the discussion in Discord with KCJ. He was talking about how he finally got around to watching K-pop Demon Hunters, and so he watched it, and he decided his kids are younger than our kids. I think his kids are like 3 and 6, and so he decided that it would be too much for his kids. That
Actually,
they
all right, yeah, because we advised watching it first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so because there are some darker themes, there is a fair bit of violence. And so yeah. And so I actually mentioned in Discord to Casey, I was like, I get it. I really do. Every kid is different and every parent is different. And so each parent has to take a good look, an honest look at their kid and determine what's best for them. And I've mentioned it a few times at various conventions and on the podcast, but a great resource for parents is IMDb's Parents Guide.
Yeah.
It's a crowdsourced review where they go onto IMDb, other parents do, and they say, hey, then they break it down into categories, violence, language, and various other categories, and they break down, okay, this is what is in the movie, and they'll give examples, so you might run into spoilers. But if you're trying to be an informed parent, that's the risks you have to take if you don't have time to
Sure,
actually preview it yourself. And so yeah, that's a great resource. And what my kids can handle, even if they're the same age. So my youngest is 6, and I think Casey's oldest is 6. And so what my 6-year-old can handle could be and appears to be very different than what his 6-year-old can handle. And some kids are a lot more sensitive in general than other kids.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you just gotta know your kids, and you gotta know what they can handle.
And as we roll the dice, we sometimes we had bad parents, and my parents, I wouldn't say were bad, they were kind of clueless. I wasn't allowed to watch scary things, but I watched the Matthew Broderick Project X, and you want to talk about scarring you for life? That movie will scar you for life when you're 8 years old watching that. And I'm like, why? What? Oh, so bad.